Hello and welcome to our culture magazine on I24 News, where we bring you the best from the world of entertainment and art. Today on our show, the French Film Festival in Israel. Two Iranian Jews make a documentary about their mixed identity. And the latest provocation from Las Fontrelles. But let's begin with some cultural headlines. Billy Crystal, the film, TV, and stage star who started out in the 1970s sitcom Soap, will be returning to the small screen soon. Crystal will join the Book of Mormon star Josh Gad in a series called The Comedians on the FX network. The two will play a mismatched pair of comedians, one a veteran, the other a newcomer, who are teamed to star in a late-night sketch comedy. The show is based on a Swedish idea, and FX has committed to produce 13 episodes. Crystal's return to TV is a part of the ongoing trend of big film stars appearing on cable TV shows, such as Matthew McConaughey on True Detective, Kevin Spacey on House of Cards, and Robert De Niro on HBO's upcoming Criminal Justice. The last time Crystal was a regular on TV was on Saturday Night Live, a program quite similar to the imaginary one created in his new show. The San Diego Opera, which has hosted such opera greats like Joan Sutherland, Luciano Pavarotti, and Beverly Sills for almost 50 years, announced Wednesday that it will shut down after its current season ends in April due to financial difficulties. The opera's board declared it faces an insurmountable financial hurdle, but will try to fulfill its existing financial obligations. These days, it is almost impossible for opera companies to survive on ticket revenues alone. In the US, they rely on philanthropy, and in Europe, they often receive large subsidies from government. In recent years, San Diego had struggled to balance its budget, scrambling for new sources of donations and pushing ticket prices up as high as $280. The melancholy surrounding the company's closing will be echoed in its Thursday performance of Verdi's Requiem. I guess the fat lady has sung, and it is over. It's certainly not over for Game of Thrones, HBO's international hit series based on the book series. A Song of Ice and Fire might be adapted into a film series soon. During the show's fourth season premiere in New York on Wednesday, the book's author, George R.R. Martin, said that as the book's plot become more and more complex, they might need a big $100 million film production to wrap things up, depending on how long the TV series runs. He added that another option being considered is making a movie based on the Tales of Dunk and Egg book series, a trilogy of spin-off novellas set 90 years before the events on Game of Thrones. I guess now we just have to wait for Game of Thrones, the musical, or an opera. France produces about 200 films a year nowadays, and the influence of the French on film history cannot be overrated. Here in Israel, the 11th French Film Festival opens Friday in cinematheques all over the country, offering the best of this year's crop. Very happy to welcome Olivier Tournon, the audiovisual attaché at the French Embassy in Israel and one of the festival's programmers, and Caroline Bonnet, the owner of Eden Cinema, a distribution company of French films in Israel. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for welcoming.
So tell me a little bit about the highlights of this year's festival. Olivier.
So it's a festival, we present 20 movies, and this year we have decided to present, we always present the most recent production of French movies, but we have decided to add two documentaries because they talk about school, about the way you see school and you behave in school, to survive and to have some hope when you are in difficult situation. And we also have two restored movies, old French movies, but that we will present on DCP. And one of them is Purple Noon with Alain Delon, who was the first time he was seen on the big screen. Not the first time he was seen, but this is a movie which make him a star, really. And it was
another opportunity to see how it was, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an adaptation of the novel by Patricia Highsmith, Mr. Ripley. So it's a beautiful movie that we see now.
How do you go about selecting the films for the festival?
We are trying to make a selection that is balanced, which means we want, first of all, to work with professional people here, so with distributors. So we are launching film before they are released theatrically.
Okay.
And second, the festival is an option to see film that you'll never had the opportunity to see, but we are very aware to make it balanced, which means you have comedy, you have thrillers, now we have some documentary, and first films. But the whole festival is it's a really a big success in Israel for
right.
11
But
years.
when bringing films from France to Israel, it's not, you can't just take I guess maybe you can, but I guess you can't just take the highest grossing films in France and say they'll work in Israel. I guess you have to try and adjust it to the Israeli...
We see a lot of films, first of all, because as you say, the 200 films a year, we don't want to go just on the big hits, so we watch a lot of films. And we realize, as I told you, we really try to make a selection. Of course, we think about the Israeli audience.
What do you think about the Israeli? What would work well with an Israeli audience that might not work as well other
First of all,
places?
the Israeli audience is quite educated in terms of foreign cinema also. So on one hand, they are very open to see a different cinema, even though it's a smaller audience. On the other hand, it's quite very Americanized in Israel also. And in the same way, there is also a new French cinema, more dynamic, little more commercial, which doesn't mean that it's not good, because it's
I will just, if I may, I will just say that I don't really think about the Israeli audience. It's not that because I don't respect them or whatever. It's just because we know that we can challenge the Israeli audience. So we can bring them art house movies from France, and that maybe movies that don't have any chance on a theatrical release, but that we know that the festival people will get very interested to watch and to come and to see on the big screen.
I see. What do you think is the current state of French cinema? Because we know in the past it was maybe the leading film industry around the world, maybe not in number but in quality. Not sure it's still the case.
Listen, in Israel, after the American cinema, in foreign cinema, in Israel, the French cinema is the cinema that is the most seen after American cinema.
Right.
So it means that there is a place that is coming back, and I think, as I told you, mainly because there is also, a different cinema in France also. French cinema is not just Alain Resnais and Godard, even though they are, icon for everything. With
all due respect to them.
Of course, but it's also very important that even in Israel, that Israeli knows very well this cinema. And our purpose is to bring new faces, to bring new dynamics. And but we try, as I told you, to make it balanced, that we still have a popular audience.
Also, I would say that maybe the French cinema is not today a trendsetter, and but you have in the world multiple audiences, and you have to turn to them, and we can see, in the last few years, successes like The Artist or Untouchables. We were two different films.
There's certainly lots of good things happening in French cinema. Thank you so much, Olivier. And
Thank you very much. Thank you to host us.
Still with film, among the films taking part in the Sephardic Jewish Film Festival in New York this week is the short documentary Reading Tehran in Tel Aviv, about two Jewish Iranian women and their connection to their Farsi roots. Avri Rosen-Tzvi spoke to the film's director, George Itzhak, about the ties between the cultures.
Reading Tehran in Tel Aviv deals with a delicate subject: the identities of Jewish women of Iranian descent.
I really deeply sense myself as 100% Israeli and 100% Iranian.
The short documentary features two women, Orly Noy and Josephine Meirzada. One translates contemporary Iranian literature to Hebrew, the other is an artist who works with Iranian themes.
I did want to tell the story of women active in this kind of work, because I think especially, speaking about stereotypes and preconceived ideas, people don't associate the women of the Middle East with progressive thinking in art.
Through their work, these women tried to spread Iranian culture. This is especially difficult in Israel, a place not too receptive to anything Farsi.
That's really the main mission of the women in the film. You know, they use their art, literature, and visual arts to try to create some sort of like basis for connection between the people of these two countries.
My message has nothing to do with hate or the others. It's a message of commonality.
The director, Joel Yitzchak, himself hopes to bring the complexities of the Jewish-Iranian relationship to the front.
I always wanted to show that Jews and Iranians and Jews and Muslims have a lot more in common than people think. And while I do think I show that in the film, ultimately, you know, I still kind of left with the fact that despite all these commonalities, the Jews still left that country.
Yitzchak, a young Jewish man whose family immigrated to the United States from Uzbekistan, often deals with cultural identity in his films.
Meeting people, and they just couldn't believe that I was a Jew from Central Asia. Nobody knew there were Jews there. So it kind of started with that, my personal background, and trying to explain who I was to people. I feel like a lot of Jews in the diaspora, especially in North America, have a lot of these identity issues because they are so far removed from their roots now.
The film was recently screened at the Sephardic Jewish Film Festival in New York. Yitzchak thinks the festival showcases to both Jews and non-Jews a culture they might have otherwise not been exposed to.
It really shows that now, these years in this decade, it's really the coming of age of a lot of Sephardic and Mizrahi filmmakers who are now finding themselves old enough and detached enough from their history to start making films about it. And I think what it does really fundamentally is it shatters a lot of stereotypes. You know, people have a lot of preconceived notions, and when they see these films about the really varied cultural history of all these countries, they're forced to kind of change the notions they've developed.
Now it's Thursday, and it's time for Shachar Peled's recurring segment, Off Screen. Welcome back, Shachar.
Thank you, Oded. Good to
Now,
be here. Yes.
What are we talking about?
Let's talk about sex. Definitely a subject we're not talking about enough. Yes. And thank God, Nymphomaniac Volume 1, the movie, is released this week, upcoming weekend, in the United States, already making a lot of noise. First of all, because of its director, controversial Danish director, Lars von Trier.
He never stops.
He never stops.
It's unbelievable.
Being provocative on screen and off screen. We know him from Breaking the Waves, Melancholia, Dogville, very provocative films.
I have to admit, for me, ever since Breaking the Waves, it's really hard for me to watch his films. I have, but it's really hard. But I love him.
He's very difficult, and in real life he's difficult as well. 2011 press briefing reminds us of him saying he understands or relates to Hitler, since we haven't heard from him. But now he's back with the first part of Nymphomaniac, a provocative story of a woman who is a sex addict, and she recounts her historical sexual stories in very graphic detail. Mm-hmm. So he's once again looking at this thin line we've seen recently between art and pornography, actually. He's actually using real porn stars as doubles in the movie for the body shots really? Of the real stars. And it's very interesting to see, and not many...
There is actual sex on screen.
Actual sex on screen, the entire 4 hours of the film, which is the short and censored version, because there's the director's cut, which is 5.5 hours. And still, it managed to attract a lot of famous actors. Of course, we have Charlotte Gainsbourg as the lead, wonderful Charlotte Gainsbourg, but also Uma Thurman and Shia LaBeouf and Jamie Bell, which we remember as Billy Elliot here in this terrible sadomaso S&M scene. So it's very hard to he's a very difficult director, and it's very hard to relate to his films, and many countries find it actually difficult. Here in Israel, I don't know if they're frightened, but we're still not sure if it's going to be screened. It's already been released across Europe, and in countries such as Brazil, it's surprisingly very successful. Mm-hmm. There is a very big Catholic population there, and still people love him. Here in Israel, there's a big audience, loving audience of von Trier, but I think that companies are not sure what the revenues will be from such a film, and how reactions for the more conservative audience will be like. And what we're seeing here is this once again very running into mainstream of pornographic nudity and sexuality, which we've seen a lot on TV, on the small screen. But now, after 2013, we had Blue Was the Warmest Color and Stranger in the Lake, by the Lake. So now we see this film. It's not slaying sacred cows, but it's still very interesting to see in this era of quality and sexuality
Boldness,
and nudity
yeah.
and boldness. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Shahar.
Thank you, Odin.
Thank you for joining us as well. I hope you enjoyed watching our show. We'll be back next week with brand new shows. Until then, our best of show will air during the weekend. You can also find us on our website, i24news.tv. Have a great weekend.